Free will and determinism has been an ongoing conversation for centuries, and only in recent years has science really caught up with the discussion. Today we're going to take a brief look at what neurology can tell us about free will. I take it that most people are familiar with the concept of free will. I want to take just a little time to define what determinism is. It's the doctrine that all events, including human action, are ultimately determined by causes external to the will. Some philosophers have taken determinism to imply that individual human beings have no free will and cannot be held morally responsible for their actions, and it stems from the universal laws of physics. In theory, all the phenomena that we see, like the weather, for example, something that's extremely complex, can be predicted by the fundamental laws of physics. And this really bleeds into the mind from the perspective of determinism. Dr. Michael Gazzaniga, in his book, Who's in Charge, talks about a few massive jumps in neurology that have been made recently that really help us see free will in a different light. When doctors perform a split brain procedure, the outcomes are always different. Sometimes they get these people quite consistently that can't notice their own hands. These patients insist that they're either one of or both of their hands are not actually theirs. This is due to the fact that in the brain there's certain areas that are responsible for receiving information from different body parts. And for example, if the area that receives information from the hand is damaged or no longer there, then when the hand sends information to the brain, it's not received, causing the brain to think that the hand is not actually its own. Another outcome of the split brain procedures that actually happens with every single patient is they become blind in one eye. However, none of the patients actually notice the difference in their eyesight. They all come out on the other side thinking that everything is normal. They will adjust their head position to correct due to the fact that they don't have vision in one eye, but they will not consciously really notice the difference from before and after the procedure. The last thing I want to mention is a specific case where an individual after a split brain procedure thought that his own father was actually an imposter, and that even though it looked like his father, he didn't think that it actually was, and was really persistent on the fact that this individual that was in the doctor's office with him wasn't actually his dad. Gazzaniga postulates that this is because the emotion area of the brain was actually cut off from the facial recognition area, and without those two things combined, he could recognize that that guy looked like his father, but due to the lack of emotional connection, he didn't believe that actually was his father. I want to point out these three cases because they suggest that our reality that we experience is something that can be highly manipulated, and clearly something that's fundamental roots are found in our brain. This for a long time was up in the air. Many people believed that consciousness and brain function wasn't necessarily inherent to our brain, but it's a kind of something that was outside of our brain, but used the brain to control the rest of our body. However, clearly science has kind of disproven that theory. This leads us in the discussion of free will, how free will must be tied to the brain, not something that's external. But this obviously leads us to the question, how could something purely physical create something that has free will like that, even though free will seems to go against the laws of physics? Nobody knows exactly how or if free will exists, but one of the best theories that I've seen on this comes from Gazzaniga in his book, Who's in Charge. He explains in his book that one of the most predominant theories in neurology is that the brain is comprised of tons of different modules, including emotion modules such as anger and fear, and the combination of all these modules is used in the decision-making process. Gazzaniga also states that through the combination of all these modules working together, there's a new level of organization that occurs in the brain. He uses an extremely powerful comparison between atoms and our own brain. As we know, atoms obey quantum mechanics, but the physical things that they make up, like the ball, like this computer or this microphone, obey the laws of physics. If an object comprised of atoms, like a bouncy ball, followed quantum mechanics, our whole universe would be different. But the fact that they obey the laws of physics shows that there are different levels of organization. This leads Gazzaniga in the discussion of free will in the brain. Neurons obey the laws of chemistry, just like atoms obey the laws of quantum mechanics. But the collective brain modules that are formed from these neurons don't obey the laws of chemistry. Rather, they obey a different set of laws because they're a different level of organization, similar to the physical object that I mentioned earlier. Within this combination of all these modules, which comprise of all these neurons, we have the concept of free will that emerges out of that. Again, I want to clarify this is Gazaniga's perspective, but I think it's an extremely powerful one. It's really important to look at all these different perspectives when you're looking at something as complex as free will and determinism. Although more and more people really believe that determinism is correct each and every year, clearly there's a place in the conversation for free will. For more on free will, personal responsibility, determinism, all this kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe.